This week's all-new episode of South Park was called Truth and Advertising, and it just so happens to be the penultimate episode of Season 19. It finds the four main boys brought into the whole ongoing conspiracy by Kyle after Mr. Mackey reveals that PC Principal and others have gone missing. While it is nice to have the boys return after being more or less absent from last week's episode, it does feel strange for them to only start caring about what's been happening around South Park right here, right now, where before they really couldn't care less. Once again, this week's episode focused on the insidiousness of modern-day internet ads, and we get some good solid laughs from every time the boys try and research the problem. More and more ads stop them and turn their attention to doing other stuff. And because Truth and Advertising seems to still be riffing on the whole Blade Runner / Invasion of the Body Snatchers type of stories, eventually the boys grow to feel they might not be able to trust one another. Well, except for Cartman, who they never trust anyway, and Kenny, who never seems to do anything important. Mainly it's Stan and Kyle coming to blows, which gave me by far the biggest laugh of the entire episode. Even 19 seasons later, the worst thing you can do between this group of friends is say someone is acting like Cartman. While all this is going on, Jimmy and the newsmen are still trying to unravel the mystery that is Leslie. Only things get complicated when it appears that Jimmy might actually be getting sucked in by the power of the ads, or as the newsmen put it, letting his dick do the talking. Much like in the last episode, I ended up really digging the secret cabal of newsmen as a gag, and how they even talk to each other in that news speak. The rest of Truth and Advertising I found to be something of a mixed bag. Randy scored major comedy points with me early on by saying South Park is kinda lame now and the Marsh family should leave. Couldn't help but feel his comments on how the town of South Park has changed was, in some way, a meta-reference to how many fans, myself included, feel about the more continuity-focused season that Season 19 was. Not the lame part, mind you, but the part where he's like, hey, you notice that South Park's just like, oh, now. The stuff with Mr. Garrison, Caitlyn Jenner, and the now returned Principal Victoria did far less for me, honestly. It all basically exists to hype up the big mystery while also being sure to keep things super vague. I am still dubious whether or not the writers do have an actual endgame in mind for this three-parter, or if they're just writing it as they go along as they have in past. But they do put a lot of hard work into trying to connect the dots of a lot of seemingly unrelated things, like the PC frat, the Whole Foods, and the overall gentrification of South Park. This is all interesting, don't get me wrong, but for the second week in a row, I didn't find any of it particularly funny. Also, I may have lost the thread here, but are they saying that PC bros are like ads because I guess you're gonna have to tune in next week to find out why. Truth and Advertising was a much funnier episode than last week's one. It benefited from the inclusion of the four main boys and some seemingly self-aware bits from Randy, but I can't help but feel this whole overarching mystery plot for the last three episodes is way more overcomplicated than it needed to be. Continuity is great for dramatic series, but for comedy sometimes it feels like you just end up hitting the same jokes over and over again, or really stretching out your final punchline. All the same, I give this episode a 6.5 out of 10. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching my newest video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll feel like checking out some more videos I have on offer here at Cape Joel.